Hi, I'm Susan Jabinski with Morningstar. Whether you're contributing to an IRA for the first time or been investing in one for years, Morningstar's Christine Benz has some tips for getting the most out of an IRA in 2025. She's here with me today to discuss some of them. Christine is Morningstar's Director of Personal Finance and Retirement Planning, host of the Longview podcast, and author of the best-selling book, How to Retire: 20 Lessons for a Happy, Successful, and Wealthy Retirement. Thanks for being here today, Christine.
Susan, it's great to see you.
All right, so let's start out for people who are funding an IRA. One of your first decisions is, okay, do I do a traditional IRA or do I do a Roth IRA? How can someone make sure they're making that right choice and really sort of maximizing the tax benefits for their particular situation?
Yeah, well, so the income that you've earned, the earned income that you have, that's going to kind of set your parameters right there, because there are income limits that apply to traditional deductible IRA contributions as well as Roth IRA contributions. But assuming you find yourself in a position where you could do either that traditional deductible contribution or a Roth contribution, the key thing you're thinking about is the tax break more beneficial to me at the time of contribution, or is it likely to be more beneficial to me in retirement because my tax rate will be lower at either the time of contribution or at the time of withdrawal and retirement? So you want to kind of peer into the future. It's very difficult to say. For some people, maybe splitting the difference between the two types of contributions is an idea. But certainly there are folks who are, say, older workers who have not yet amassed a lot of retirement assets. They may actually be really good candidates for traditional tax-deferred contributions if they can deduct that contribution. It's not necessarily all Roth all the time.
Got it. So Christine, as you alluded to, there are income limits, and they sort of aim to keep high income people from investing in an IRA. But you say that people shouldn't necessarily let those income limits sort of get in the way. So what do you mean by that?
Right. This backdoor Roth IRA maneuver is alive and well here in 2025. And the basic maneuver is that you contribute to a traditional IRA. There are no income limits to make that type of contribution, assuming you're not deducting it on your tax return. And then you convert it to a Roth at some point in the future. If you haven't racked up a lot of investment gains from the time you made the contribution to the time that you do that conversion, it should be mainly not a taxable event. The key wrinkle is if you have a lot of other traditional IRA assets that you've never paid tax on, then the conversion may be at least partially taxable. So get some tax guidance here, but this is a strategy that people can use if they are shut out of those direct Roth IRA contributions to get some money into that Roth IRA column.
Let's talk a little bit about the timing of IRA contributions. And, you've shared research in the past from IRA providers, asset managers, who point out that most people, where they see the flows coming into people opening IRAs is sort of at that last minute, tax time, deadline, got to get it in before I file my taxes. Is that really the optimal approach to funding an IRA?
Well, absolutely not. Yeah. So there's an opportunity cost there, right? If you're waiting, say, 12 or 15 months longer than you actually need to get the funds invested, to get them in the account, then there is going to be some slippage in your return versus jumping on it early after the turn of the calendar. So for the 2025 tax year, for example, you can fund that IRA today if you want. So the idea is to step on it with respect to those contributions, even though your tax filing deadline is the deadline, that April 15th deadline. Don't wait until the very last minute to get the money into the account.
And how about deciding where to invest that money? Again, we hear from asset managers, IRA providers saying, people will put the money in an IRA, but then they're not investing it. How can people sort of overcome that paralysis? Maybe?
Right. Vanguard had some great research where they shone the light on this very problem, that they saw the money coming in, but then it just sat there in cash because people were probably more focused on getting their taxes done, doing what their accountant told them in terms of funding the account, and then they didn't actually get the funds invested. So I love the idea of just having some sort of default for your IRA contributions. I think a target date fund is a beautiful account investment type to use within the IRA context. We mainly think of them as being for 401k investors, but there's no reason why you can't just have that single sort of no to low maintenance option within the account, and then you can just reduce the guesswork and get the money invested.
Now, you think another way to sort of maximize your IRA is to conduct a cost audit. Why do you think this is important, and what can it yield for an investor?
Yeah, certainly all of our research here at Morningstar points to the importance of costs, keeping them down if you possibly can. So just do a little bit of due diligence on what you're paying for your investments inside of your IRA. You're probably not paying any additional administrative expenses for that IRA. Most investment firms do not have any extra expenses, but check that too. But do that cost audit of the investments themselves. If you use our portfolio functionality on Morningstar.com, our X-ray functionality within the portfolio tool will give you a little asset-weighted expense ratio and a comparison of how you're doing relative to, sort of the standard fees that would apply to a portfolio that was similarly allocated. So check that, see how you're doing. It may be that if you're in cheap index funds, you're doing perfectly well, but maybe you have some also ran expensive funds in that IRA portfolio too.
Now, you also think it's smart to revisit your beneficiaries in an IRA. Why is now a good time to do that?
One reason is that we have seen some changes in the rules around inherited IRAs. The short answer is that the benefits of someone inheriting an IRA from you are a little bit less because in many circumstances they'll need to spend through and pay taxes on that account within a 10-year period. So make sure you're keeping those, at a minimum, make sure you're keeping those IRA beneficiary designations up to date, but also just make sure that you're checking with your estate planning attorney to make sure that those beneficiary designations match what makes sense for them and for you from a tax standpoint.
And then lastly, another perennial question about IRAs is, whether you should be converting to a Roth from a traditional. So how should investors be sort of thinking about whether that's a good move for them?
Yeah, this is a huge question, Susan, and it's really important to get some advice here rather than just kind of back of the enveloping it, because if you're working with an advisor who is tax savvy, he or she can tell you how much you could reasonably convert each year to avoid bumping yourself into the next highest tax bracket. They may also or should also be able to give you some advice about whether it even makes sense to convert. So if you're still earning a good salary and working, it oftentimes doesn't make sense to do those conversions. But the period just after retirement and before those required minimum distributions start, that is a really fruitful period to consider doing some conversions. So get some help there because it can save you a lot tax-wise if you are doing the conversions, but it has to add up for you in the year in which you make the conversion as well.
Got it. Well, Christine, always a pleasure tapping into your IRA expertise this time of year. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Susan.
I'm Susan Jabinski with Morningstar. Thanks for tuning in.